Hello, everybody. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my new show, Out of Nowhere. Today, we've got Mark Florentino on my show. Mark is the author of Master of Reality, which is a book about the completion of Einstein's unified field therapy. That's a long word to say. Can we please welcome Mark to the show? Hello there, my good friend.
Hello,
How are
Bob.
you?
Fine, thanks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, you're
I'm
welcome.
sure we'll have a terrific time. I know
Oh,
you,
yeah.
you wanted to touch on about UFOs and
Yeah.
we've got Project Skyhook. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, I met a good man, Les Durant. I think he's been on your show um, a while back, and who was doing some work that was interesting to me. We should just filming the sky with cell phones. And I had this idea. I wanted to do this since I first started reading about UFOs. I thought it would be a good idea for thousands of people just to take their webcams and point them at the sky and record 24/7. Eventually, you're going to catch some close up pictures. So that's what Skyhook is really all about. I've got now two cameras, really high res 4K, pointing up at two locations in the sky where I've seen UFOs already at close range. And I'm hoping for a repeat. I'm hoping maybe every once in a while these UFOs are going from one base to another or whatever. I catch a close up view. That's the idea. That's the game changer. What we need is to start getting some close, not little blips. I've caught some of those so far, but they're not they're not going to really change people's minds. I they'll always argue, well, it's a bird, it's a bug, it's a plane, but you can pretty much rule all those out by getting. By the way, the UFOs move. They move differently than airplanes. Airplanes are always steady. Satellites are always steady, straight across the sky. UFOs do zigzag maneuvers. They'll move and then stop. Then they'll move really quickly, go somewhere else. They do, they're not like helicopters, not like hot.
Yeah, it's true, Mark.
So did you see that glitch right then? There was a
Yes, I did. Yes.
okay,
Yes.
all right. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. Um, yeah.
But
So
do you think there's certainly a few hot spots in different areas where people can see them more, or is it because we're more tuned in to looking at UFOs?
um, I think they've probably been pretty steady from even before we had cameras and airplanes and stuff. Um, but now I think we're seeing more and we're getting more videos and stuff because our technology's improved and our cameras are better. And in some areas, yeah, there are hot spots like off the West Coast, um, off of the LA area. What's that island out there? Is an island out there, Catalina, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
Catalina.
and then there's on the East Coast as well. The Navy pilots see UFOs on an almost daily basis, so they're around, and I don't think there's been a slump ever. Really, they're just a slump in reporting. The media's been kind of told not to talk about this that much anymore, so you don't really see it there, and they're not taking it as serious. Uh, for the past 30, 40 years. Now they're getting a little more into it now that all these meetings are happening in Washington and so forth. They are
But
beginning.
Mark, we seem to be talking about UFOs more now than we ever done.
Yeah, and maybe this is a buildup. I think you got to condition the public, the mainstream bulk public, the large amounts of people that are out there, to the idea that this is, that ETs exist, that we're not alone in the universe, and that's going to take, a lot of effort, a lot of sightings, a lot of people talking about it, movies coming out of Hollywood. Now it's, the percentage of people that believe in UFOs, I think it's over 60% now of the population. And that number continues to go up. So maybe that's what disclosure is really all about, getting the public ready gradually by talking about it, and more sightings and such, to the point where at some point they just say, hey, we've had enough, tell us what's going on, and we're not going to accept that you don't know, or any of these other bad excuses. We want to know the truth, and unless you start telling us, we're going to keep asking and keep prying until we get it. And I think at some point they have to give it up, or maybe the ETs themselves will come forward. I've had this dream for years where I'm out
You glitched a bit again.
glitching. We glitched again. I don't know. Maybe they don't like us talking about UFOs. Anyway, in this dream, I see the sky filled with them all over the place, and it's like a big celebration. And that would be a way that would be hard to ignore. Would be very hard to cover up if they are over every major city in the world all at the same time. I mean, if I were in charge, maybe that's the way I would like to bring it on. But I don't think you could do it cold turkey without a lot of introduction, a lot of sightings over the years, a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, and there are a lot right now on cable TV. Just loads of psychic phenomena, UFOs, paranormal, all that stuff. People are just getting inundated with this sort of stuff. So yeah, maybe at some point it's going to happen. And yes, I do believe there are hot spots. I wish there was one over my house, but apparently there is not, because I go through the video. I haven't seen anything yet since I first started many months ago. I did catch a few little blips, but
Tell us a little bit about how do particles move through space then?
well, that's what I'm working on now. When I wrote my book, I really worked on and solved gravity one, main gravity, the gravity that we all know about, planetary attraction, that kind of gravity, inertia. Um, and I have that right up on ResearchGate that explains that gravity really is a geometric contraction of space. One must realize that in order for this universe to work, there's really only one thing that exists, just one thing. And everything is made from that one thing, that thing that has substance. And that one thing is space itself, or what they used to call back in the 18 and 1900s, the ether. And from the ether, all particles of energy, all particles of matter exist as convolutions, Einstein used to call them, twists of space, either clockwise or anti-clockwise.
Hmm.
And from that, those twists, which persist in space, they don't dissolve, they don't unwind, they can't be destroyed. Um, all the particles and all the matter and all the energy we see come into this universe, emerge, and are detectable by equipment, by our eyes, uh, our touch, and so forth. We can see all of this matter and energy because it's in motion. And if it were not in motion, everything would cease to exist. So After I wrote the book and I did the paper that I uploaded to ResearchGate to explain Gravity 1, I went on the hunt for the cause of particle motion, which when I had the idea, the first thing I did was go out and research Einstein to see if he had the same notion that this was important to know this. Because before that time, uh, physics was based on kinematics. And what's kinematics? Kinematics means that we acknowledge things are moving, but we don't know how, and we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to theorize on it. We're just going to accept they're moving. They have momentum. And so all of their equations and everything use that speed of light, constant and so forth, but they don't know how it works. And if you ask them, you get a lot of hesitant, fuzzy answers about how particles move. So I went and I looked to see if Einstein thought of this too. And so I went and I looked where in his unified field theory papers. And finally, after reading this one that was incredibly difficult to read and comprehend, the unified field theory based on Riemann metrics and distant parallelism in the year 1930, he says these are the last two sentences after he explains all these equations and all these things he was working on. He says this: nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived. The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of motion for particles yet. So he knew as well that this was really critical. Once you know how, the method, why particles move, like the photon, it goes through the entire universe, billions of light years, never slowing down, never stopping, never changing speed. How does it do it? They don't have jetpacks on each particle. There's no rockets. That motion comes from the internal structure of the particle. So that's what I went in and I looked at, and I decided that this had to be solved. And I knew it had to come about from the charge, because that's the basic geometric structure of the particle. So I had to get down and look into deeply what about this twisting of space would cause a particle to move. And eventually, what I found is there's the amazing thing that I found was the cause of particle motion is not primarily from the electrostatic field in its twisting of space. I had thought that initially that this rotation of space caused space to expand, which it does, and it causes a pressure gradient. And I thought that was what was causing the particle to move, but it's more than that. It turned out, and what I discovered was that, in fact, dipoles, what are those? Dipoles are north and south pole of a magnet, a positive and negative pole of electrostatic fields. Dipoles, they have the poles, right? The negative and positive charge. These things have, if you think about the x-axis from the front to the back of the particle, what happens is in dipoles, um, the positive charge leads, the negative charge follows. They both move. The negative charge chases the positive charge through space. So that's the cause of motion. And the reason is that there's lines of force associated with charged dipole objects, either magnetic or electrostatic. And those charged poles cause a deformation of space. So if you go out to the internet and you look at a magnetic field, you'll see lines of force going in one pole and going out the other pole. Those guys back in the 16, 17, 18, 1900s got it right. That's actually what happens. And because of that motion of space within the particle, that particle is caused to move. It creates two very weak forces. Gravity 2 is at the front of the particle. It's the positive charge. or the North Pole. And then anti-gravity is at the end of the particle. So what I'm giving you now is the actual design, God's design, what I call it, of why particles move. And this is going to be the same design that's used by ETs and mankind eventually to build starships, because this is the technology, the knowledge that's needed in order to do that. So you get what was discovered by Thomas Townsend Brown, Byfield Brown effect, which in that case is, they also have stated that, or Brown stated that the negative chases the positive. It's the same thing I'm saying. Now I'm giving you the reason why. It's because the way the force, the spatial movement goes one way, and Newton's third law comes in. If the space is being pulled in this direction all the way through the dipole, then the particle moves in the opposite direction. And it does this perpetually, forever. And so it's by the very internal structure of the particle that causes motion of all particles. All particles are not at rest. All fundamental particles, quarks, electrons, photons, they're always moving. Now, you might want to, there be people out there in quantum mechanics that want to argue with that and say it's really all probabilities. Nothing's really moving. They're just changing positions somehow, and it's bound by some law of probability of some sort. That's nonsense. And that's why they're never going to discover the theory of everything, because they are off climbing the wrong building trying to figure out how that works, when that's nothing to do with how it works. It's classical field theory. That's always going to be the road to finding the ultimate theory of everything. And so I have done that work. I have achieved the equations necessary to fully demonstrate how a photon moves, including a new piece of math, a new equation that has not existed before, that determines the constancy of the speed of light. Why all of the particles move at just the same velocity. If you didn't have this action going on inside, it's actually happening inside of the particle, this change. Every time you had a particle of a different frequency, a photon of a different length, it in theory should move at a different rate of speed, because it has a different energy to mass. And I did all those calculations. I converted the photon's energy to mass. I took that mass and then I pumped it through another equation from Newton, got the velocity, the thrust, and was able to prove that it generates enough velocity to go at the speed of light. But the problem was, then when I did that, I had a problem that each different wavelength was going at a different speed. And that's not how it works in reality. We know that for sure. They all colors of light, all X-rays, gamma ray, they all go at the same speed. And so I
Now,
had
but
to,
can we travel faster than the speed of light?
yes, there's, when you crank up the power. See, when I'm talking about where the particles are moving, it's a smaller, very weak energies and very weak power involved. But when you increase the dipole strength to very large energies, hundreds of thousands of um, amps of current for a magnetic system, or maybe several 100,000 volts to a million, 2 million or more volts in a capacitive electrogravitic model, then you get enough force and thrust that not only do you get this um, massive thrusting system, you also are going to pull space apart and drop permittivity and permeability. These are properties of space that determine how fast an electrostatic or magnetic field can move through it. When you drop those, the discovery made by James Clerk Maxwell, C equals 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability. When you drop those numbers in space, in the field around this ship, by using an intense magnetic field or using an intense electrostatic field, you drop those numbers down. And when you do that and work the equation out, then you see the speed of light jumps up. And when they get to zero, the speed of light goes infinitely fast. And they've found that that's true in metamaterials where they adjust the permittivity and permeability within the material. And if you go to ResearchGate and look that up, you'll see that those people are claiming when you shine light into that material, it goes infinitely fast. And so there is some scientific experimentation that seems to confirm that theory, that idea that I have. And now they argue it, well, it's the group velocity versus the that's just scientists trying to explain something away that they don't understand.
But Mark, do you think some governments are using this now?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, absolutely sure. Somebody has talked to me in the past who has had a close encounter with a UFO, gave me documentation to prove that they were legitimate people who have never come forward. And I don't think they ever plan to come forward, but they're frightened because they have confirmed that we do have these spaceships, that they saw it, they were so close to it they could touch it. It was a small craft the size of a Volkswagen, and they saw the markings on that craft, and it said U.S. Air Force experimental. And they saw this thing take off and go into off into the distance. It was in the desert at an enormous speed with no wings, no jets, no rockets,
No
just
sound.
no sound. Well, they did say they heard like a rolling sound, like a bowling ball rolling around, which is very odd, which tells me whatever we're doing is a very primitive technique. Because regular UFOs that we see that are from other planets, there's typically no sound. You don't hear anything, no movement at all. Although there may be some rotation of something, a field or something going on inside of the ship. And some of the designs that I've seen from other people uh, claim that there's liquid mercury going around in some of these ships and so forth. And I'm not really clear on what that does exactly to help the anti-gravity situation. There may be other techniques than the ones that I've developed in my research and my writing. Uh, my explanation uses the brute force of magnets or the brute force of highly charged electrostatic fields and capacitors to create the thrust. Now, I'm sure advanced civilizations have refined those techniques into many other variations, maybe using microwaves or whatever, who knows?
Do you think? Do you think they help us on Earth?
Yeah, it's hard to say because there's so much disinformation going on from the government. It confuses things. But I have talked to some people who claim to have are being taken aboard ships regularly and trained and so forth. And they say they're very friendly. The aliens are not these, evil things that we see in movies, the predators and the other monsters that you see in the movies. They're generally speaking very nice, and they're trying to help us raise our consciousness so that we can join them at some point. I look at them as our brothers and sisters in the universe, and at some point, eventually, if we survive our own primitive behaviors and such, and don't wipe ourselves out again, um, that we'll be invited into that federation probably very loosely knit federation of planets that are just basically agree not to cause harm to other worlds and civilizations and people and so forth, coexist. And I think that's the ultimate goal. And someday when we have become less primitive minded, less violent, less arrogant, less all of the egotistical, they'll make contact. They'll ultimately say, okay, the training is over. There's enough of you guys out there. We can start working together and maybe, because right now, you land somewhere like Central Park and you might have 100 or 1,000 guys out there with guns shooting at you. It's just like, it's not safe for them. It's not like not safe for us. It's really more
I was going to
unsafe.
say that, Mark, they must look at us sometimes down here and say, well, they're always fighting against each other. They always wanting to blow people up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the last thing I think that aliens really want is us to have this advanced technology honed to the point where we can safely get to other star systems. Because if we do that and we're carrying a nuclear weapon on that ship, now we could do some serious damage to their civilization.
Mm.
And they've got to realize that, we shouldn't really be allowed to leave the star system, uh, because right now we're just out of the primitive ages. You just go back a couple of 100 years, and we're still using bear claws and stone knives to do stuff. And so we're still really pretty primitive, despite the fact that we've made great advancements in technology over the past 100 years. We're still emotionally, intellectually, uh, still very violent, and you can see that in the news. People that should be considered dangerous in the outer reaches of outer space and so forth. We're the wild west of the universe, and so it's going to take more time for us to settle down and all agree that got to live by God's commandments, and at least we have to become aware that there is really a God and an afterlife, and that as the aliens, I firmly believe, already realize that there is a God, a universal God, and we need to
What about,
expand our consciousness.
Mark? What about, can we time travel then to the future?
I have heard that we can. I have talked to people, I've been contacted, people that claimed they were super soldiers. I interviewed one. I still have the tape. This guy's never been on any of the other shows, like Stephen Greer and so forth. This guy said, "Hey, I read your book and I was moved by it. You actually have the time travel and the time theory correct." And he says, "Your idea on time segments is absolutely correct. In other words, we're born into a time segment." And he even gave me the name, which I've forgotten, but I could go back and look at the tape of our time segment that the government established, in that they have some way, some means of being able, in theory, from what they say, to transport individuals forward or backwards in time. So they're doing a lot of both. Uh, Mainly a lot, you supposedly using people to travel forward in time to fight extraterrestrials. Why we would need to bring people from the past to fight aliens in the future? That part doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Why don't you just use the people that are there to do it, who are probably more well equipped? There's nothing especially good about bringing somebody back that's from 40 years ago to fight in a future war. Uh, that part's, I've never really bought that, but maybe it's true. I mean,
Would
it's
you
there.
like to time travel?
Nah, um, maybe to the future. I have a lot of. I wonder about my childhood a lot, and I miss it. I miss having my parents alive again and being with my brothers and going sledding and stuff. But when you go back in time, it's you may be able to go back to that time, but it's you that is 60 years old. You don't de-age and go back and then you're there as a 5 or 8 or 10 year old. You could see your 5 or 8 or 10 year old self there, but
You see yourself then.
yeah, you don't want to. I think it's probably a bad idea to make contact and start saying stuff because you can mess up your own future. So it's a very tricky business going back in time, but it would be great to visit the old house and see the old lake and the old elementary school and so forth. But more practically speaking, I think the future time travel would be better because there'll be more cures for disease. Then the lifespan will probably been increased. A lot of pluses for going into the future, unless you get there and then you see our future is totally a disaster. There's been a nuclear war. Who knows? You don't know until you go there
No, you
and see.
don't know.
Yeah.
Um, can you explain the new star formation theory? Is it true that all stars have neurotronium?
Neutronium, neutronium cores. Yeah.
Yeah,
I got the idea when I was uncomfortable with the current explanation where astrophysicists said that stars form because there's gases, hydrogen out in space, big gas cloud with, let's face it, zero pressure, right? And so the all particles are just floating out there with a resistance to get close to each other. The electromagnetic force is way more powerful than the gravitational pull of those particles to come together. So they should never, and the scientists know this, they should never fall together to the point where you got the pressure like you have inside of the sun. So I says, wait a minute, those gas clouds, just as the scientists say, just don't twist somehow and get pressurized and fall together. That makes no sense. I'm betting they're wrong on that. And so I said, wait a minute, you got to have some really powerful gravitational force there centered to gather the gas around it, and then this it would form an atmosphere of hydrogen around the object, the neutronium sphere, and this would cause the fusion process to start because the pressure would be enormous, millions of atmospheres of pressure, because this thing is pulling so tight, forcing the particles of hydrogen closer and closer together, which then they heat up, which then you get fusion and more heat, and you have a star. So, what evidence do I have that that's true? Well, every time a star blows up, supernova, we have found that there's always something left behind, a neutron star, a core that's made of solid neutrons, neutronium. Every time. And the only other time there's not that, there's a black hole, which is just simply a really big neutron star. Maybe, in the star that's at least 8 to 10 solar masses more than ours, that has a bigger neutronium core. And when it gets so big, it gets super dense, an event horizon forms around it. So there is something inside of black holes. It's a neutronium sphere that's spinning rapidly, and its gravity is so strong, light can't even escape it. So in each and every case, a star does blow off its atmosphere. What's left behind is a neutron star. Rock solid evidence that what I'm saying is true, and it makes sense because there is no way that hydrogen gas on its own, just floating in outer space with nothing around it, is going to come together to form a star. So I'm 100% certain that the sun has a solid core of neutronium. And if you look at there's a graph that they have made from NASA that um, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's got to do with the way the gases spin around the sun, because there's something inside that's also spinning and it causes frame dragging, which is a theory or an idea that comes from Einstein's general relativity, that space actually twists into a spiral because the thing is spinning real fast. So
Mm.
space kind of goes like that, is following it. And when anything falls into it, it starts going around because space is bent around and pulls it. And so it starts orbiting. So the gases in the sun are orbiting, they're moving because there's something really powerfully dense in the center, twisting the space and spinning. So then the sun's gases start to spin out. Tackle line measurement. There's the word. You go and look up the tackle line measurements, and you'll see that the outer part of the sun's gases are moving at a different speed than the central core. As you get closer to the core of the sun, the lines converge in this graph, and that's indicating there's something solid that's inside of the sun. Now, their claim, well, it's just highly condensed hydrogen. Well, what's holding it together? Because it's trying to explode and separate, yet it doesn't. There has to be an incredibly intense gravitational field in the sun, in every star, holding it together. And
What about the moon then?
I believe that every celestial object, every planet, every moon of a certain size that's cylindrical, spherical, I should say, is caused with just smaller um, neutronium spheres. So, like in the Earth, there's one there. And the trick is now to get the formulas to calculate the size and know how big it is. It could be as big as a golf ball. It could be big as a basketball. It could be 100 or 1,000 yards uh, around the diameter. It's going to be some size that generates enough gravity, that generates enough fusion, and we know scientists have turned their detectors toward the center of the Earth, and we know there's neutrinos, geoneutrinos coming out of the center of the Earth, which then means that there's either fusion going on there or fission. It's Most people would like to say it's fission because they can say, well, there's plutonium down there and it's all that stuff. But I'm saying no, the fusion process is what's causing it.
I was going to say, when you're talking about that, why do we have volcanoes then?
Well, I've been watching the volcanoes because this particular planet, the Earth's crust, does not appear to be thick enough to stabilize this planet. So I'm concerned that over the centuries and maybe now, since there's a rise in volcanic activity at this point, a very steep rise. If you go to the USGS site, you'll see the graph, and they'll try to warn you to not make you panic because it's a startling graph. Active volcanoes continue to go up. The Earth's crust is destabilizing, and they don't. I'm sure they don't want to come out and make any claim like that. But if you go over now, if you want to do your own research, look up Iceland and see what's going on right there in Iceland right now. They got serious tectonic activity. The earth is cracking and moving apart. Gases are coming out of the ground. They're about to have a major volcano go off in Iceland. Now you can go from there, you can go to Naples, Italy. They have a super volcano there that they believe may also erupt. Super volcanoes change the atmosphere. They put up a lot of ash, enough that they could cause a global cooling. Now, if that isn't bad enough for you, now there's also a threat of the supervolcano in the California area that's also becoming active and may erupt. No one knows. The science is inexact. Um, you know, if the land is continuing to rise in these areas, that's concerning. The amount of earthquake activity is skyrocketing in these areas. And so they're monitoring it, but they're keeping it very low profile, keeping that not a lot of stuff is going
Yeah,
into the press. But I'm concerned because if our core is too large, the rotating sphere, it's going to create more fusion activity, more heat. The heat in the core is like 5,000 something degrees or more um, of molten lava or magma. Um, that's going to cause, if that number is going up, if it's getting larger, and the pressure is going to increase. So if you have more and more pressure, more gases coming out, more magma, you're going to have more
mm,
volcanoes. You're going to have more cracks in the Earth's crust. And if you look at the plate tectonic maps, and you'll see that the planet is cracked all the way around. We think we're not alarmed by this because we've known about this for years and we think it's normal. And what I'm telling you is that's not a normal, healthy planet to have this. We should have great concern. We should be building starships because things could get a lot worse. Most of the extinction level events that have happened here on Earth came about from volcanoes, not asteroids. Four out of the five were volcanic activity that went bananas and had changed the atmosphere so much we had deep freezes and the, ice ages that lasted centuries in some times that just wiped out loads of animals and plants. So we should be probably a lot more concerned in studying this than we are. What can we do about it though?
exactly. What can we do about it? Global warming, and
Well,
it's
I
melting at
guess
the North Pole and South Pole, and
yeah, I well, the global warming is not going to be a big problem if one of these volcanoes goes one or more goes off. We're going to have a deep freeze. It's going to reverse overnight, and within a few months, the temperatures are going to drop dramatically. And global warming, we're, we're we're putting a lot of effort and energy into something that's probably not going to help us. It's certainly not going to kill us if we get warmer to a certain degree. But if we go into an ice age like that, we could have some big problems. So what we really should be doing is two things. One, stockpile. Get foods that we could last for 20 or more years, and manufacture a lot of it. Uh, Build up huge reserves because there's going to be starvation if things go really wrong. The other thing is, if it really gets bad, we'll need to get off the planet, and we'll need starships for that.
mm,
Uh, Starships or stargates, one technology or the other, or both. And we need to start nurturing relationships with beings from other worlds so that we can have another planet we can go to. Well, probably more than one, because I wouldn't want to offload the whole population onto just one other planet. We'll probably need to do three or four. So we're not working on that at all that I know of. So what happens if we have another volcanic activity, which could happen at any moment, or another asteroid for that matter? I'm filming.
well, don't they reckon Yellowstone Park that could go up eventually?
Which one?
Yellowstone.
Well, yeah, they talk about that one. They play that one down a lot, but it's very active. I mean, it's
They
grant
said if
it's
that
land.
goes off, it would damage, real damage.
Well, the United States breadbaskets, it's going to get piled with ash. All of our crops are from the Kansas, Missouri, Michigan, all the way across to all the way to New Jersey and so forth are going to be covered in this ash. Um, we're going to have problems getting food, and most of us are not doomsday preppers. We're
I
not
can remember, I
prepared.
think it's quite a few years ago. I think it might have been Iceland. They had a volcano eruption. Ash went into the sky, and planes couldn't, in
Oh
certain
no,
areas, couldn't fly.
no, you can't in a jet air. If you fly into that cloud, your engines are going to die. The ash is very acidic and it messes up the engine. And no, you got to go around volcanic ash cloud. They know about that now. Then nobody flies a jet into a volcanic cloud. That's suicide. Um, but if you get big enough ones that wrap around the planet, especially around the equator, it's going to be hard getting uh, to a lot of places. You're either going to have to fly way over it or way under it. Because you get too much of that in the jet engine, you got problems. Ask any pilot. So yeah, it's a possible big problem in our future. That
I was going to say, how do you assess our future then?
well, I think that ETs are aware of the problem and they may be able. I'm sure they have the technology they can fix it, and how they would do it would be to remove part of the neutronium core to make it smaller. And then the core will cool down, the volcanoes will settle down, and the threat will be over. If the core is too active, it could go bad. And there's a lot of people that think there was once a planet between Mars and Jupiter, and that asteroid belt was what happened to that planet. It had a core that was highly unstable, and it blew the planet apart. Um, then the question is, where did the core go? If the explosion was violent enough, it could have been blown into a very strange eccentric orbit of some sort, and that's maybe why we haven't detected it.
Do you
But there's
think? Do you think aliens have been here before then and
oh
lived
yeah,
on this planet?
yeah, I'm sure, and they're still living here now. They they live in underground areas. They have powers that are well beyond our imagination, and we can only talk about it. But what they don't do, they have craft that can go through solid matter, so they don't even need a doorway or something. I was thinking for years, well, why if they're underground, where's their door? Somebody must have seen that open up, but no, they can fly right through solid matter. And if they can fly through solid matter, that means they got technology that can alter the state of solid matter somehow. And so they could maybe use this technology to scoop some of the core material out and calm the planet down. So, optimistically, I could say the ETs could probably fix this problem if they were so inclined. Um, but mankind, the best we can do is prepare or evacuate. And we're really doing neither.
Not at all. It's true that we're not we're not thinking about it, about the future. The governments aren't.
No, it's the thing about it is I want to get this neutronium theory out there and people realizing if they did and they really believed it and they did some experiments to confirm it, they would realize the situation as it really is, and they could begin making plans one way or the other. But right now, other than the government buying a lot of guns and a lot of food they're storing for them to keep them safe just in case things go south, the general population is going to be stuck in the middle of something potentially really bad. And we could lose 10, 20, 30, 80, 90% of the population if a major volcanoes go off. One or more super volcanoes go off. The temperature could drop per yearly average of 4 degrees centigrade. That would be catastrophic. That would put us in a severe ice age. Even just 1 degree drop would put us in a mini ice age. Two or more, really, we're going to see ice packs going down all the way through Canada into the northern part of the United States. Glaciers. There's
God.
nobody going to be able to grow food in those kind of conditions. Only the people in around the equator. And so everybody would have to move down there, and there wouldn't be enough food for everybody. So it's not going to be good if,
No,
we're not.
Mark, do you think Einstein and Tesla were born before their time?
Well, I know Einstein, you know, no, because there's no accidents. Tesla came about to bring a great change to the world, bringing us power and power distribution systems and motors and the radio. Just amazing amount of discoveries. And Einstein was born in his time to advance the state of science and physics to the level it is today. Unfortunately, he was born too early to finish his unified field theory work because he was unaware of some certain facts that nowadays are common knowledge, like there's quarks inside of neutrons and protons. If he knew that in his time, he probably would have come up with the same solution or a similar solution than what I've done. He would have done the same kind of well, what I used was a rank 2 tensor. That's what he predicted would be the type of formula that would solve um, the gravity problem, explain the origin of gravity, which is what I've done in that paper. So yeah, he was born a little too early to finish up the unified field theory, but certainly born at a time where he could advance us with special and general relativity. A super genius, great guy, and
Tesla wanted to give free energy.
yeah, he did. He was a very, he was a noble man. Today, he would be classified by the United States government as what's the word they call it? A troublemaker. There's a word for that.
Yes,
uh,
giving free energy away.
yeah, they don't like people that do free energy. They're unfortunately, this society is anti-cure, anti-solution. They want things to stay just the way they are so that we keep having to purchase energy at the prices they see fit to charge us. They want us to not really get cured from diseases like cancer, even though they claim, and then we put billions in.
The
um,
tablets,
yeah, there's people that
pharmaceutical companies
there's
make
there's
money.
there's people. Yeah, that's right. If you cured cancer, you'd break the medical community. If you cured heart disease, you'd break the medical community. I mean, that's a billion, maybe hundreds of billion or even $1 trillion dent in their economy. Heart disease is the number one killer, and there's articles out there on the internet and doctors that have uncovered certain pieces of information that if people were to eat the right foods, supplements, and so forth, they would not develop heart disease. But yet these people are being fought against, silenced, edited out, whatever you want to call it, and their stories, and tied up in legal suits and so forth by the U.S. government and the pharmacy community because you're going to
Yeah, I
ruin
think
their
there's people
business.
out there what's like your free energy, um, run cars on certain new stuff, and the companies have just bought them out and said we'll give you as many mileage, but we need that formula.
Yeah, and they just shelve it. And I know of somebody that told me they have patents at this power company. They bought it. They worked in that patent department. They seen the patents. They said it would change the world. And the power company says we're not going to use them.
Crazy.
So I know for sure they're they're holding us back. They're holding us down. And I wish it wasn't this way. I wish humanity would love one another and support one another and not do these sorts of things. But we're not at that point yet. And that's probably part of the reason why because we work against ourselves. We work against ourselves. The aliens, I'm sure, would be attacked if we didn't give, if they didn't give us everything that, we wanted. So they got to keep us at a certain distance until we evolve away from doing these sorts of things and not hurting or harming people that come up with, 0 point energy solutions or magnetic motor solutions or whatever, that you can generate free power. Uh, I'm, I feel lucky that we even have solar, but
Mm,
uh, they
true.
found a way to make money on that. So it's
I'm
not,
sure they have done.
yeah.
We're not far ending the show. Where can people get your book?
Oh, I'm at www.super-relativity.com. Super-relativity.com. I got links on the front page. It could take you to Amazon to buy the book, or you could uh, buy the book from my website and I'll send you a signed copy. Um, there's links to my YouTube page and my or YouTube channel, as well as my research work on ResearchGate. And hopefully, a new paper will be going up within the next few months talking about the slip wave, the thing we talked about today, the cause of particle motion, the same method that's used for uh, interstellar space travel. That paper will be going up pretty soon. Um, that's everything's there on the website. Just go to www.super-relativity.com.
And do you do the odd podcast then, or are you on do podcast yourself?
I I ask people like you, if you don't mind, I'll put the copy of this on my website. So if you
Yeah,
want
that's
it,
fine.
yeah,
No
I'll
problem.
I'll copy them and put them on the website because we covered a lot of important information that people need to know about the Earth's core. We need to know that we could build starships. We need to know, about cures that are going on in the world today that are being kept silent. Uh, People want to know this stuff. People want the truth.
Of course I do.
People, and they want the world to get to be a better place. And I'm firmly dedicated to that. And as long as nobody silences me, I'll keep doing that. I keep saying, hey, United States Air Force, whatever, if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to just come over my house and, knock me off. Just tell me to stop. I guess. You see that? I got a blink. Do you think that was coincidental? I'm not sure that that
Yes.
was coincidental.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Uh,
Do you think we'll ever get disclosure
Oop,
then?
there you go.
Do you think we'll ever get disclosure?
I don't know, but that whole blipping thing concerns me. Like,
Yes, we
I
know
will
what's
say it
happening.
again, U.S. Air Force, if you want me to stop, just send a couple of guys over and explain the situation to me, and I guess I'll stop. But until that time, I'm just going to keep pushing forward because I feel that this is something that I was sent to Earth to do. And so I work
Yes,
for a higher authority. And that
I'm sure
authority
it
wants
was.
this work must be done and he wants it to happen. And so
Yes,
I'll just hold to that course until, I'm told otherwise.
yes, exactly. Yeah, well, thank you again for coming on the show. It's always a delight speaking with you. Janice do says, thanks for another great show tonight, Bob. Yeah. My guest next Wednesday, the 20th, is Earl Grey. I can't remember if he's been on the show before or this is the first time he's coming on the show. So I'm sure we'll have a fantastic time talking with him next Wednesday, the 20th of December, 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Pacific, and 8 p.m. in the UK. So, yeah, so thank you, Matt, for coming on the show. Take care. Have a lovely weekend.
Okay, thank you, Bob. It's good being here.
And
Good to
look
see
after
you.
yourself.
Okay.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye.